Hey guys, here's another interesting video. This video popped up after the first court appearance for Tyler Robinson.
G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of the man accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson. A couple of quick things before we get started. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. And in addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. So what we're looking at today is the first appearance of Tyler Robinson in court. Let's just jump right in.
We'll be handling the first appearance calendar today. At the conclusion of the hearing, for the first case, the court will take a recess and remind all those who are scheduled for the first appearance calendar to log back in 15 minutes after the court has taken a recess. As a general note, no electronic usage is allowed unless pre-approved. Any disruptions.
What we're already noticing is there's a lack of natural movement. He's trying to sit very, very still. It takes intentionality and concentration to absolutely not move at all. And this may be someone who's very similar to Bryan Kohberger in terms of how he presents. He's the one who murdered the 4 students in Idaho. We're going to keep going, but so far, obviously, he's not showing us much of anything.
To the jail, are we ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Calling case 251-403-576, State of Utah versus Tyler James Robinson. Could you state your name?
Tyler James Robinson.
Thank you for being here, Mr.
This is continuing to remind me of how Bryan Kohberger presented in court. He was always very robotic. He would respond with precision, but he would also show you as little as humanly possible.
And state your name?
Tyler James Robinson.
You also noticed he leaned forward, which shows some awareness of what's going on around him. There's nothing that, to me, that would suggest at all that this is someone who's disconnected from reality, but these are the things you have to look for, because I don't know what his defense is ultimately going to be.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Robinson. I'm Judge Graff. Mr. Scortis.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. You're probably...
You also saw that he nodded in agreement when the judge thanked him for being there. So there is some participation in this. He's not just sitting and doing nothing.
Be already aware of my presence or why I'm here, but if not, I am not entering an appearance. I'm not counsel on this case. I'm working with the county to get counsel assigned, but we need you to allow for the appointment of counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Scortis. I want to go through the qualifications for indigency, but that is my intent, Mr. Scortis.
Very well.
And I thank you for being here. So, Mr. Robinson, you have...
Now, if you're paying attention to the way that he was sitting just now, we're seeing a big breath in. This is not someone who is completely emotionless. He is scared right now. When you take a big breath in like that, it's because your heart is pumping faster. He's trying his best not to show it, but there's certainly some emotions going on under the surface, that's for sure.
Mr. Scortis, very well. And I thank you for being here. So, Mr. Robinson, you have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, the court can appoint an attorney to represent you. I have reviewed your declaration of financial status and find that you are indigent. I'm provisionally appointing a Rule 8 qualified attorney to represent you on your case, Mr. Robinson.
So you saw him close his eyes as he bent his head forward, as he continues to acknowledge that what the judge is saying. When you close your eyes like that, that tends to be because you're thinking about something you don't like. So I suppose the reality of having an attorney, maybe some of the reality of this situation is starting to set into him a little bit.
I'm sorry, under Rule 8B and Rule 8C, for counsel appointment in a case where death may be a sentencing option. I'm ordering that those declarations be filed prior to the next hearing, which is set for September 29th.
You may already be noticing that there's a distinct lack of emotion on his brow, on his mouth, next to his eyes. You're seeing essentially nothing as far as real emotions go.
10 a.m. Mr. Robinson, I also wish to inform you of your rights against self-incrimination. Anything that you say in court today could be used against you, and we want to protect your constitutional rights.
Now, you saw when he talked about self-incrimination, did one of these. He was withdrawing his lips. We do that when we think about not saying something, when we actively are thinking about what we don't want to say. So I think as that was said, he was already thinking about the fact that he is not going to say anything. I think he's going to be very difficult when it comes to talking to him about any kind of information. Have you ever Googled your own name or email address? Before I had Aura, I did one for legal removals, one for patents, and Aura, all of these data analysis.
Robinson, at this time,
Analysis.
you, and we want to protect your constitutional rights. Mr. Robinson, at this time, you will remain in custody without bail. Mr. Skordas, is there any other points that you wish to address?
No, thank you very much, Your Honor.
Turning to the state.
Yes, Your Honor. Chad Grunander for the state. I'm also joined, and they're listed as attendee.
Now you could see when the state jumped in, he leaned forward just a little bit. That's a way that we connect with others. So he's really going to be actually paying attention very intently here. So he is going to be participating in this process. He's certainly thinking about what's being said. So it's not somebody who's just looking around, leaning back, doesn't care what's going on. As soon as the state appeared, he leaned forward just a little bit. So this has got him on alert.
Grunander for the state. I'm also joined. We are the trial team on this case. I do have a few points I'd like to bring up with you.
You'll notice that when he looks at something, he basically moves his eyes and maybe moves his head a little bit, but this is a way to maintain control. He is going to be extremely difficult throughout this entire process. You're seeing someone who wants to maintain absolute control. As I said earlier, it reminds me so much of Brian Kohberger when he would show up at hearings. I also want you to think about the fact that some people, after they've committed acts like this, reality sets in. They become emotionally fragile. They're upset. They're feeling intense. They can't sit still, or they cry. We are seeing a serious lack of emotion. And I'm going to tell you at the end of this what I think that implies. And I think that it could be pretty serious.
I'd like to bring up with Your Honor. We have filed a pretrial protective order on behalf of Erica Kirk. We would ask the court to review that. It should be in your queue, Your Honor, and sign that.
What I was looking for was when Erica Kirk's name was brought up, was there any sort of emotional reaction? Because obviously she is the living victim who is going to be impacted probably more than just about anybody else. You saw nothing. No blinking, no looking away, nothing that indicated any sort of discomfort.
I have reviewed the pretrial protective order and will be issuing this pretrial protective order in favor of Erica Kirk. Is there any other business that we need to address today, counsel?
Just for the court's information, we did file just recently, within the last few minutes, a notice of intent to seek the death penalty that was filed by Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray.
So you saw him nod after they talked about the death penalty. You didn't see fear. You didn't see anxiety. You didn't see him try to pacify himself. This is someone who I suspect is going to fight. This is someone who is going to be as difficult as humanly possible if he's capable of being difficult.
Mr. Robinson, what I also want to do is you have the right to have the charges read that you stand charged of, and I wish to read those to you at this time.
So now we're getting a little bit of anxiety. I want you to watch the slow blink and then the swallow afterward when they're talking about his charges.
Read that you stand charged of, and I wish to read those to you at this time.
So trying to keep a brave face, but is ultimately very anxious. I also want you to keep in mind that the nods that he's doing, I think those are also a way to maintain control, to say that he's the one that is in control here. So when they're speaking to him, saying, when the judge says, I'd like to read these to you, because that's the kind of decorum that judges have when they're speaking in court, he nods as though, yes, I'm giving you permission for that. So to me, there is a certain level of arrogance that's coming through here.
And charged of, and I wish to read those to you at this time. Aggravated murder, a capital felony in violation of Utah Code annotated 76-5.
Now, we just got a flash of contempt. It's very hard to see because I know the quality of this is pretty limited. But if you watch on the left side of the screen, watch the corner of his mouth. Well, actually, I guess for you, it's this corner. Watch that corner of his mouth. It very subtly goes up when they're reading this charge.
Mr. Robinson, for count 1, aggravated murder, a capital felony in violation of Utah Code annotated 76
Right there. It's subtle, but that's a look of contempt.
5-202, in that on September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk under the following circumstances.
You notice that he nodded his head when they said that. When they said knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk, he went like this. I I think there's some pride here.
In Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk under the following circumstances. The defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another individual other than Charlie Kirk and the defendant. Notice conviction of this offense may carry the death penalty or pursuant to Utah Code 76.3-207.7, a mandatory...
A lot of deep swallowing, a lot of anxiety. Not surprisingly, I think most people would be anxious in situations like this, but he really is doing his best to suppress any sort of expression of that, not let anybody see it.
For a term of imprisonment for life without parole or an indeterminate term of not less than 20.
You also saw big breath after that. The anxiety is so hard to control when you're not doing anything to pacify yourself. But when you pacify yourself, it makes your heart rate slow down so you don't have to breathe as hard. That's why people do so many pacification behaviors, but he's resisting doing the majority of them.
7.7, a mandatory term of imprisonment for life without parole or an indeterminate term of not less than 20.
You saw the slow blink there. Now that, I think, was him trying to calm himself down.
25 years. The SPAC and parole shall consider the defendant's selection of the victim as an aggravating factor. Violent offense committed in the presence of a child aggravating factor. The sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider as an aggravating factor in their deliberations that the defendant committed a violent criminal offense in the presence of a child.
Now you'll notice when they were saying that, he actually looks away. There may be some real discomfort with this charge being read to him.
2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, believed that an official proceeding or investigation was pending or about to be instituted or intended to prevent an official proceeding or investigation and attempted to induce or otherwise cause his roommate to withhold testimony, information, a document.
Now, this is an area where I think we're getting more actual emotion. We're seeing his mouth move more. You're seeing a bigger swallow. You're seeing his chin move. Watch this right here.
An official proceeding or investigation and attempted to induce or otherwise cause his roommate to withhold testimony, information.
See, a heavy swallow, pursing the lips together. When it comes to his roommate, I think this is going to be the biggest pain point for Tyler Robinson.
Believe that an official proceeding or investigation was pending or about to be instituted or intended to prevent an official proceeding or investigation and attempted to induce or otherwise cause his roommate to withhold testimony or information, to wit, directing his roommate to stay silent if the police question the roommate.
Now you're seeing he's moving his jaw to the side. Sometimes we do that almost as a way to prevent ourselves from crying or from feeling intense sadness. So I do wonder if talking about the roommate, or maybe there feels like there's a sense of betrayal or something like that, but this coming up seems to make him feel quite sad.
His roommate to stay silent if the police question the roommate. Count 7, violent offense committed in the presence of a child, a Class A misdemeanor in violation of Utah Code.
Then you're seeing the heavy breathing again after talking about the roommate. I don't think it has anything to do with the issue with the child that they're talking about now. I think that he's still reflecting on what he's heard about 5 seconds ago.
Annotated 76-3-203.10 sub 2 and 76-3-203.
All right, we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Hopefully this is helping you better understand some of the behavior and body language that we saw. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about what we saw and also what we didn't see and what that might mean. Now, what we saw was a little bit of anxiety here and there, but overall an attempt to suppress as much emotion as possible, to move as little as humanly possible. We've seen this before. Chad Daybell, Brian Koberger. There are other people that have behaved very similarly in court. What we didn't see was any sort of guilt, any sort of real emotional expression that made him appear upset in any way, shape, or form. And sometimes we do actually see that. Sometimes people have a hard time reconciling what they've done. When they hear the person's name, when they hear the spouse's name, when they hear something about the victim, it does make them upset. But there does not seem to be anything like that here. And what I think this implies is that if he in fact committed this act, if he's found guilty and he in fact did do this, this is the kind of person who would have done it again. Because sometimes people engage in behaviors like this, and afterwards, they don't know what to do. It essentially breaks them emotionally. That is not what we're seeing here. So if you have any other thoughts about this, or if there's anything else you want me to analyze, please let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.
At Kroger, you never compromise. You get up high quality that's guaranteed fresh and down low prices on over 1,000 items. With quality and savings that add up, Kroger shoppers never compromise. Kroger, fresh for everyone.